So for our presentation, we're going to be talking about cutting costs to save on hotel and air travel. I'm Scott, and then we also have Fritz, Evan, and Finn.
Here's a little bit of an overview on WVU spending. And as you can see, WVU has spent about $185 million in total expenses, and that's just as least as we can see. And of that large chunk of change, nearly 10 million of it was spent on travel alone. But as you can see, travel wasn't even in the top 10 of our highest spent categories. And of our top 5 highest spending categories, they include constructing and contracting, financial services, professional services, human resources, and laboratory. Those categories account for over half of the university's total spending. And although travel may not be one of the highest spent categories, it was, on the other hand, one of the most frequent purchases made by the university. And after cleansing and analyzing the data further, I noticed that there was a lot of miscellaneous purchases made by the university. This brings us to a subcategory of travel, and one of our main focuses, hotels. The university stayed at 1,052 different hotel locations for both in-state and out-of-state lodging. But of those 1,000 different hotels, over 50% of the university's purchases were made at just 5 hotels. And those are Hilton, Marriott, the Intercontinental, the Wyndham, and the Starwood Hotels and Resort, with Hilton and Marriott accounting for almost 35% of it. And my 2 questions are, why are we as employees at the university staying at such a wide variety of hotels? And why isn't there more of a regulation on where they should be staying?
We're now going to get into our second subcategory, which is air travel. So of the roughly $10 million we spent on travel, around 25% of it came from air transportation. So WVU stayed at 10 different or used 10 different airlines, with 5 of them accounting for around 92% of all spend. These include Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, United, and it also includes a private charter business called LJ Aviation. So that was a bit weird that we spent around $700,000 with a small charter business like that, and not a big company like Southwest or United or one of them. So since the other 5 airlines only accounts for around 8% of the total spend in air transportation, we could probably just eliminate those 5 airlines altogether and just save the money right there to put towards one of our more frequent used airlines.
This brings us to in-state travel. The total amount of in-state travel is $860,000. It's about 8.7% of the university's spending in West Virginia. So, I mean, that's not bad. The in-state lodging average is actually about $6,500 per every time lodging. So, I mean, that's pretty high. Could definitely lower that somehow. The amount of in-state lodging is roughly 3.6 million, and that means this in-state lodging is 37% of the university's spend on travel.
This brings us to how we could decrease spending. You could reduce spending by being flexible with where you stay. Instead of using the more expensive method of travel, budget a low-cost travel plan. Try to stay within a reasonable travel area to avoid any extra costs. So like the slide said, the main thing to do is stay within the budget. Even though you might not have the most comfortable travel experience, you don't always need the most lavish style of living.
This brings us to risk mitigation. Lowering costs in select areas that could lead to more pushback from companies. And then as a result of that pushback, you could just lose total relationships with some companies altogether. And you could possibly offer incentives to employees that are able to decrease their spending. allow guests to receive free food and beverages at select partner hotels to reward them for saving money. And then by staying at those partner hotels, we would be accumulating frequent flyer and rewards points. So that's a little bit of a kickback from the hotels. And then that would gain us incentives that with those select hotels.
So the steps moving forward, find the most economically logical way to travel. Try to stay within the budget of the university and use a reliable transportation company. Be flexible with the means of transportation as well as with lodging. It's always smart to also take into account how other universities with similar budgets monitor spending habits. There's nothing wrong with comparing our travel or our traveling with other universities for insight.